We don't have any absences to excuse, so we can move on from that. Executive Director's Report.
Oh, okay.
Mario, will turn it over to you. And is it possible for you to go to the podium
Sure.
to do it? I know that if you go to the podium, then the people who are watching at home on the cameras will be able to see you rather than you being off camera, so I'd appreciate that.
It's not necessarily a good thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, board members, for your continued service. Let me just touch on a few things that Jennifer has asked me to update you on. The website is coming very, very well. Now, we finally have, with Karen on board, have been able to focus on meaningful text to be inserted in the 20 different sections that we have. So we're right in the middle of final editing on that text. Of course, the work of setting up, hosting, structure, setting up all those different specific sections that had already been done with our relationship with the provider. What we were missing was the content that's so very important. So good report in that we should now, I would say by our next board meeting, have that running and able to be accessed from whatever source, and then we can, more importantly, then we can start promoting it, to promote the profile on Windcrest.
And so just to let everybody know what the status of the website currently is, if you go to the City of Windcrest site and you click on EDC, it says under construction and it still lists the previous board members. I've received a lot of communication about that, and we know that that is the status now. We are working on it. We're getting, transitioning to the new content, but just so everyone knows, when Mario says it's close, we know that what you see if you log onto it right now, close is behind the scenes.
Right.
And what you see when you click on the site is still what we had there before. So again, I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that it's still not there yet, and we know that. But the progress is being made behind the scenes, and when it's officially done and ready, we will promote it. But just so everybody knows that's the status.
I wanted to update you on the BRE program, Business Retention and Expansion, Local Business Retention and Expansion. We have modified the profiles that we're gathering from the different businesses. Our goal now that we have Karen on board is to visit 2 businesses a week until we go through the list that we now have. We also are, and it's on your agenda, to consider some other things that we will look at to enhance the participation of businesses in our program. So I feel good about where we are. One of the things that we have in hand now, but is being worked on, updated, is the existing directory. And we've consolidated our directory with that information that we have from places, the fire department and the city. And Karen is going line by line on that and calling the businesses, first trying to get the information for the directory on the telephone, secondly from the website, thirdly, if we need to visit them, we will go visit them to make sure that in 60 days we have a good product in the form of this directory that we then can promote to the citizens of Windcrest, and therefore be promoting the businesses that are in our community. The activity continues to be very good for us in Prospect. I won't use company names, but we do have a new restaurant that's looking at a site right near where the mattress firm facility is on the pad site adjacent to that. We've got a good lead there. It's my understanding that the Vietnamese market continues to go forward, although they've had some difficulty. They need more power than anticipated. I'm sure that there's a lot of refrigeration involved that wasn't needed for Office Max. So power and the fire repression system, sprinkler system, are also 2 of the issues that we're having to work through with them, but that continues to move forward. I'll also say that there is one good lead, and they look like they're already doing some there was some at least inspection and investigating of the Pollo Tropical building, which is a very nice building that we've been focused on, along with churches and Whataburger that we now have tenants in, or at least they're building out right now. But Pollo Tropical now has a good lead there that we think may come to fruition. We'll know more in the coming weeks. The only other thing I would mention is that all of you have said that you can attend the joint meeting we're having with the City Council, and Jennifer and the Mayor are working through that agenda right now, and I wanted to mention that because that's coming up on the 23rd at 5:30. Shaping up to be a very good agenda for both bodies, for the education update of the council and for the interaction of this board with the City Council. And that's all I had, Madam President.
Just one correction, the mayor put the meeting at 5 o'clock.
Oh, did he?
Yes. I was sending telepathic signals to him to say 5:30, but he didn't. He said 5. So I know for our board, we had indicated that 5:30 was a better time for us, but the mayor said 5. So for now, it's 5. If that's an issue for anyone here that you can't make it, we can try to push it back to 5:30, but he has set it at 5.
Yeah, please let me know. Right now, we'll count on trying to get started at 5 on the 23rd.
And then before Mario takes off, are there any questions for Mario from the board? No? Okay, thanks, Mario.
Thank you.
Wait.
One quick one.
Yes, sir.
Late entry.
Our truck stop, not truck stop, but
Quick Trip.
Quick Trip, any idea when they're gonna break dirt?
The final emails on the plans are going back and forth now. I've seen them today, as recently as today. So I think it's any day now. Certainly in this quarter they'll be under construction. They are still trying to to open in the summer. So a very aggressive timeline. I really think it's just a matter of a couple of weeks before they're able to go forward with the construction.
I do have.
Yeah,
You talked about visiting the businesses
Yes, sir.
over the course of a few weeks. Does this include visiting Rackspace and walking over there with cookies and milk and saying, we really appreciate you being here?
So one of the things that Mario and I have discussed is I've asked Mario to see if he can set up a meeting with Rackspace and the mayor and myself.
Okay.
So I've asked Mario to try to set that up.
Yes, sir. George, we're aiming high on that one because it's important to us, and we need to get up to that level because we, unfortunately, with the turnovers they had, the new CEO and others, we really don't have much of a relationship there. And know that you'll be briefed at the 23rd on the where we are on the Master Economic Incentive Agreement, the MAIA that we've been working on. Joe has helped us for months, so that'll be a little more clear to you also. But we're aiming high to go in and reestablish that. We just need some clarification about the future there. We need to move some of those pad sites to where we get constant inquiries about a couple of those pad sites from very interested, very serious businesses. So it's a priority for us.
Well, I think it's very important that we keep a good relationship with every business in Windcrest and let them know that we appreciate them, but
Yes, sir.
especially somebody that big.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Any other questions for Mario? Thank you, Mario. Next up, we have citizens to be heard. Members of the public may sign up to provide public comments to the board in accordance with board and city ordinance and policy. Marie, do we have any?
There's no one signed up to speak.
No one has signed up to speak. Moving on to discuss an act. Number 1 on discuss an act, consider and take possible action on business retention and expansion, BRE, fiesta and or other business event. Pat, I believe you're gonna give us a rundown on the past fiesta event that the EDC hosted in 2017.
Well, in 2017, we decided to have something for the businesses here. Now, a lot of people think there's only 200 businesses here because, to use real estate development jargon, they call sticks and bricks buildings. But there's over 1,700 companies that are here. Some people decided to have it, and Mario and the lady at that time, Ally, went around to each one of the businesses and invited them. We had it over at the tents in Rackspace. Well, the only problem was this young lady was very inexperienced in things, and she had a hard rock band that cost us $2,000 that you couldn't even think of all the time. So last year, we discussed about having it in another location. And then it was dropped because of other things. But what it is just to get the businesses together, have, now Joe Hoffer is familiar with the caterer, and this caterer is all known all over Facebook. And so that's what we were discussing. I went down to Holiday Inn, talked to them, and there was an area where we could just kind of wander around and have it, late in the afternoon so businesses could come into it. Well, so anyway, there were other problems with that, and so we didn't have it. But one thing that we do at Fiesta is have the Fiesta medal, and I have that here on your, in front of you. The one in the plastic was the year before, and you can see it's very, very plain. And in fact, we had 137 medals left over, and Ally was even putting them on the tables over there at the Rackspace. So then Lieutenant Preston asked me to design it, and she said she wanted something with more pizzazz. So what you have there on the paper one is the one that I designed for 2018. And I was also asked to design the one for 2019, which I did, which is better than that one. Now, the reason that I didn't bring a couple of medals I had left over is because I have them in the storeroom, and I'd have to get on a ladder to get up and get these old medals. But you can see the difference between the one that was done in 2018 and the one that was 2017. So the one there is, you can see the Roosevelt band hats there, the black hats with the blue plume. We gave 250 medals to the Roosevelt High School band.
Oh, Pat, it's being pointed out to me that you're not speaking into the mic.
Did what? Oh, I'm sorry.
The microphone, please, thank you.
So, we gave 250 medals to the Roosevelt High School band, and the major said the kids over there were just thrilled with it. And one reason we wanted to give it to them was because students from here go to Roosevelt, plus from this whole area, and maybe somebody in this other area who has maybe a mom and pop thing would come in here to our smaller spaces. But so that, it was really a big publicity type thing, and so that was my plans this year also. And everyone wanted our medals. We ran out of our medals right away. So that was 500, and this year it's 750. And we will again, if the board approves of it, give 250 to the Roosevelt High School band.
Okay. Did you have a motion that you wanted to make?
A motion to what?
No? Oh, okay, okay.
Well, it's already been approved.
Oh, it
Paid
has?
for.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah, the medals have been, past actions taken on the previous board on the medals. Now, the discussion here is, and I know, Jennifer, you want to talk about just a business event.
Right.
And so the discussion for the board is do we stage a Fiesta business event or just a business event? Do we have an event at all?
And that's what I thought we needed a motion for, so that's what I was.
At some point, we would be thrilled if we want to move forward on either.
So do you want me to make a motion on that?
That's up to you. I mean,
Well, I think-
I would say a discussion with at least present some of your ideas, Madam President, on what you think may constitute another option.
Right, so one of the things that I've found as I've been talking to some of the businesses in Windcrest, a lot of the businesses in Windcrest are run by people without a lot of business experience. And a lot of those businesses are struggling as a result of their lack of business. One of the things that I'd like for us to discuss is the possibility of holding a workshop, luncheon at the Civic Center where we could bring in some subject matter experts, potentially from the Small Business Association or other people that would have some really valuable information to help these small businesses that are struggling with some of these concepts they may not be familiar with. So I think that might be something that would be beneficial to do. In the Fiesta, this idea, all part of the business retention and expansion, here in Windcrest. So I just wanted to put those ideas out there to the board for discussion and see what you guys think of those ideas.
I think that's a really good idea, because I think we've all seen that around a business will come in and they'll be here for a year or so, and then they go broke and they leave. And I wasn't aware of the fact that a lot of them are lacking in business experience. But I think bringing them together with experts in the field in business would be something that would be cheap. I mean, it's not gonna cost us a lot of money, and it would do a lot of good for some of these businesses.
I really do think we need to grow and have more meetings with the communities, with the businesses. Going straight into like a fiesta party thing, I mean, I don't know how many meetings or how many get-togethers we would have with them, maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, just so everybody knows each other before we jump into a big hoopla with a band. I mean, we just have to see how the community comes together, all the business community here in Windcrest.
They say location, 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 and I think we're in an excellent location at 35 and 410. Come up from downtown to go to Austin, Universal City, any place like that. But this is something that I wanted to talk about. I think we need something along 35 that just really stands out and catches people's attention. Hey, let's exit here and check out what they've got here. Because I'm not saying Windcrest is ugly, because it's not at all, but it needs a little bit of makeup. Something to give it curb appeal, to draw attention, because I think people just drive by like, oh, there's some warehouses and an old building and a couple of restaurants, but nothing that says, let's exit here and see what's down the street over here. And I think that adding that to what we're discussing here should be part of it.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to have Pat develop a more detailed proposal of a Fiesta event for the board to vote on. And then I think I owe a little homework on my idea as far as what might be feasible, as far as what businesses could attend, and what kind of speakers we could get. But again, I just kind of want to take everybody's temperature and see if that's something that the board as a whole would find meaningful. And it sounds like you would. And that, again, I think we just need to refine the concepts a little bit more and put them to a vote of the board and see if we want to move forward or not. Is that good with you, Mario? Okay. All right. So unless there's any more discussion on that, we'll move on to number 2. Okay. Oh, yeah. Wanted to make sure I didn't go too fast, but we didn't actually do anything, so Marie's probably okay with me for that. Number 2 is consider and take possible action on WEDC, consideration of establishing or contracting with an accountant/finance officer. I asked Mario to put this on the agenda. I've talked to Joe about it as well. One of the aspects of the Windcrest Economic Development Corporation is that we fall under the city of Windcrest, and we have certain aspects of our corporation that are independent, and then we have certain aspects that aren't independent. And some of those aspects, it's not, it wouldn't be good business sense for us to be 100% independent, as far as payroll and health insurance for employees and stuff like that. If we had to do that completely on our own, it would be a burden on us. However, one concern I have is that we don't have an independent financial officer who has a primary fiduciary responsibility to this organization. So when we share the financial officer with the city of Windcrest. The same person has two primary fiduciary responsibilities, and in my experience, you can't have two primary responsibilities. In other words, if you have two number one priorities, you don't have a number one priority. And so I think that it would be beneficial, and I don't think it would be very expensive from what I've heard from Joe and Mario, for us to contract with our own finance officer to handle our books. It's not a very big job, it's not a lot of, it's not a detailed, labor-intensive job. And I think we could contract with someone on a part-time basis to do that. But I want to see what the rest of the board has to say about that.
Jennifer,
Yes, Pat?
well, we discussed this over a year ago, about having a separate financial, can everyone hear me?
No. Right in the mic, real close.
Turn it on.
Are you on?
It's on. Just get real close.
Okay. We discussed over a year ago about having a separate financial officer, because Mr. Hakala had told us here at an open meeting that his department only spent 5% of their time on WEDC business. So, a lot of people were dissatisfied. We needed a separate officer. So it just went by the wayside and nothing happened. So I hope that this time that we will get someone, and I'm sure Mario will probably agree that we need to have someone in that has some type of state certification or something like that, because we're a government organization.
To be clear, I make this proposal or suggest this topic not because of any concern with Mr. Hakala's work. I don't have any concern with the work that he's done, and it does not have anything to do with the person who's doing that job. It simply has to do with the structure that I think we need our own person. So I just want to make that clear to everyone, that this is in no way related to Mr. Hakala or his job
Oh,
performance.
yes, I think he's very nice to get along with.
So, George, did you have something?
In order to discuss this, do we need to have a motion? So, so that we can discuss it, I'll make a motion that WEDC consider establishing a contract with an accountant or finance officer.
Second.
Discussion.
I would just like to ask our lawyer,
Oh, can you hold on a sec? So the motion was made by George Alva, and it was seconded by John Fagan. And there's a computer screen between you and me, Marie, so I'm sorry.
That's why it's easier for you to tell me who's.
Yeah, got it. There you go. Okay, go ahead, John, sorry.
I would just like to ask our lawyer whether doing this are we legal to do this, to hire our own financial officer?
So right now, we don't have a signed agreement with the city for services either. So we've been flying ad hoc for financial reporting and financial services with them. There may have been an agreement years and years ago, but none of us have put eyes on it or can find it, frankly. Just like you can hire your own economic development director, you also can hire an accountant or bookkeeper or someone to help you with the finances. There's no legal prohibition on that. It's just a matter of you all authorizing a search or a procurement, whether you want an individual or a firm to come and provide this, and then what the scope of work would be for that is something this board would set, and then there'd be a procurement or a search process to find that person. And then we'd have to reconcile that with what the city is doing versus what they're not doing, which is another topic of discussion.
Would the city have to approve of it?
Not for employment decisions, you will have that discretion.
And where would this person's salary come from?
It would come from the Economic Development Corporation General Fund, similar to Mario's and your coordinator's position.
If there's no more discussion, we'll vote. Do I need to have,
I think you need a little more framework around what you're voting on, because just to vote on approval to hire an accountant and or a finance officer is very broad. You should have some discussion around, do you want a part-time position? Do you want a firm to come in? Like, there are accounting firms that provide this type of service. There are individuals. Do you want to employ that person, or would you rather contract? Or you could even form a committee to make a recommendation and proceed with bringing a recommendation, or even doing a search and then bringing that back as a recommendation to the board.
So we don't necessarily need a motion to,
I can amend my motion to that.
yeah, I think what we need is, we need a motion that addresses taking a closer look at this and potentially, creating a committee to build the recommendation of the specific,
Then I rescind my original motion. And make a motion that we, how did you say it, form a committee to study, what the requirements would be to, contract with an accounting or finance officer in the future.
is there a second?
Second.
All right, so George Alba has made the motion and Hob Cunningham has seconded the motion.
So someone might want to identify who that committee would consist of. You've got a motion second, live. So then someone might say, I'd like to be on that committee, or.
Is there a
You might appoint
volunteer,
people to be
is
that.
there a volunteer for the committee? John? All right, so John Fagan has volunteered to be on the committee. Would someone like to volunteer to be on the committee with John? So Hob, okay. So Hob Cunningham and John Fagan will head up the committee to look at the establishment of a separate finance officer and or accountant for the Windcrest Economic Development Corporation going forward.
Now you just call for a vote on the establishment of that committee.
Okay. All those in favor of establishing that committee, raise your right hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to number 3.
And if I may.
Yes, you may.
Madam President, in your tab number 3, you have a brief summary from me that outlines what has been going on with this committee since, as Pat pointed out to me, it's actually formed in December of 17. It was organized, first meeting in January of 2018. And as you can see there, the focus has been broad.
Could I announce the topic first so the people at home know what we're talking about?
I'm trying to get it to go on there.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Jump the gun.
That's okay. You're
I'm
eager.
trying to slow at this, but the arrow just.
Okay, so number 3 is report on the Planning and Special Projects Committee and possible action related to same. Okay, now I'd like you to tell us everything.
Thank you. Sorry about that, jumped the gun. What you have in your packet under tab 3 is a description of the activity of the committee. And there's been more, but this is a quick summary. And you can see they've looked at everything from our existing storefront grant and allocating the money to that, to looking at how we pool our money with the city, and they're the ones that made the recommendation that we separate the funds from city government according to our bylaws. The bylaws say that unless there's a contract or other instrument involved, that we should have separate funds. And so you can see that they've dealt with the issues of newsletter. Most recently, they had looked at, after we've been able to build some reserve, which took some time, that they asked me and the board agreed for me to look at structuring an incentive program to help attract more IT companies and back office type operation, particularly in light of the renovation that's going to happen at the 2-4 Winds building. So these are the kinds of things that have been considered by the committee. I have viewed the committee as a good starting point for ideas. Hob, you had an idea about the promotion of businesses, and I would think that if you continue this committee, that's where this would start. You would have the discussion at the committee level about, you know, what you saw in another community and how they were promoting businesses, and see how we can apply that or something similar here. Well, that's the way I see this committee functioning, and I would say that this is a good place where other individual board members can really get down into the detail of doing economic development.
So what you're saying, Mario, is that you recommend that we keep the WEDC Planning and Special Projects Committee, and that we nominate new members to pick it up and run with it.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, okay.
George Alba makes a motion that the WC Planning and Special Projects Committee continues and nominates new members to continue running with it.
I would like to amend the motion to include Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Compton, along with Pat Brown, to stay on that committee. Is there a second?
I second.
John Fagan has seconded the motion. Discussion?
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you.
You could just confirm they're willing to be on the committee.
Yeah.
They don't volunteer. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
I'm on.
Everybody agrees? Pat, you agree to continue serving on the committee? Okay. So we don't need to vote on it?
Now you need to vote on it.
Oh, okay.
You don't wanna vote on it if they would say, well, I didn't really wanna be on it.
Oh, okay. I'm assuming everybody wants to do everything. I should probably not assume that.
So far, you're on track.
All those in favor, raise your right hand,
Yeah.
and it's unanimous. Thank you.
And just for the record, Jennifer, you can vote. You're not the mayor where you're neutral. You do get a vote, so.
Oh, I get
when
to
you s-
vote?
Yeah, so when you say unanimous, that is a 7-0 vote.
And,
Got it.
and she can make motions as well, right, Joe?
Right.
That's correct. You can make motions, you can vote.
I would prefer not to.
You don't have to.
Excuse me, Madam President, could you name those names again so I have them down correctly?
So the members on the committee will be Hob Cunningham, Kevin Compton, and Pat Brown.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would probably limit it to 2, so we don't have 3 close to a quorum.
Oh, okay.
Because if we have 3 members on the committee, and then they happen to speak to one other member of the board, then we've had a quorum involved, and we'd have a posting issue.
Okay. Does someone want to volunteer to rescind their name? Okay. Mr. Cunningham has indicated that he will rescind his nomination to the committee for the good of the group. You've got a microphone, you can say it. Okay, are we free to move on, Joe?
You are.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is consider and take possible action on approval of WEDC investment policy and possible transfer and/or investment of up to $400,000. Pat, I believe you're prepared to speak on that topic?
Yes, do you want me to make a motion now?
Yes.
Or just have a discussion with them?
I would like you to
Okay.
make the motion first, and then we'll ask for discussion.
Okay. I move that we move $400,000 from our Frost Bank account to the Texas
Lone Star Pool.
pool, and for a higher interest rate, if that, we have other money that we put in there.
All right, so Pat Brown has made the motion and George Alba has seconded. Is there any discussion?
What is the interest rate that we make on that?
I'm not privy to that since I've been the
It's,
treasurer.
if I may, John, it's comparable to a jumbo CD right now, so.
Well, the money we had with Frost, was it in a CD or just?
No, it
Well,
actually
that's
was
just
in,
everyday walking around money.
It was in a-
Then we take the excess and we put it in the pool.
and so you understand, because the past committee had recommended the board to separate the funds, the board got to the stage of having the city move the bulk of the money from their account, which we had all our money jointly with the city. And this happened fairly recently, where all of a sudden, you know, instead of having 60,000 in checking, then we have 500,000 in checking, so it's not prudent to have it there, even though we expect that this board will make plans for good economic development uses shortly.
Well, shouldn't we look around and see what rates
Oh, I just wanna make sure
other
we're,
CDs
I wanna
are?
make sure we're correct procedurally, so before we have the discussion, we need a second.
I did second.
Oh, I'm sorry,
We have
go
a
ahead.
motion, so you have to take a vote on that motion.
We're just,
We're still in
discussing
discussion,
this
I'm
now.
sorry, I
No,
thought we
she
didn't have a
moved-
second.
She moved to, approve the movement of $400,000 from Frost Bank to the Texas.
right, and now we're
Lone
in
Star Pool.
discussion.
So are we
We're good,
moving,
right?
are we
Okay.
moving 400 or are we moving a sum up to 400? I mean, we gotta know how
I
much.
wanna make a comment. We are limited, we can't just look around to where we put this. It has to go into that Texas pool. It's not, because we're a government organization, it's not that we can just look around, and that's why it goes into that Texas pool. Now, we can have a bank account wherever we want to, and I really have discussed with Mario that, I feel that, we should take our funds, the funds before we put it in the Texas pool, and put it into another bank here in Windcrest, which is Bank of America, because the city has their funds in there, and I feel if we're gonna make that, having a home financial officer and everything, that we should have our account over in Bank of America rather than First.
Pat?
Well, I believe that we could, Mr. Lawyer, have it in any bank if,
You're allowed to, under the Public Funds Investment Act, which we follow by agreement with the city, you're allowed to have your funds in an FDIC insured account with any bank. Typically, if you're gonna move banks, and banks, by the way, is not on the agenda, you're only looking at investment transfers, not a regular depository account.
yeah.
We typically go out and get quotes from banks in like a competitive process to get the best rates. And Pat is right in that there are limited investments we can invest in.
I know.
Lone Star Pool, Tex Pool is one of them. And it's fungible, the funds can be moved in and out. So if you decide there's someplace better to go, then you can move them to that other fund. Right now, that's the only approved fund that we have, other than Tex Pool, I believe. So right now, the approved accounts that you have are limited to that. If you wanted to move the money there and then look at other options, something else we've been working on is a Public Funds Investment Act investment policy for the EDC, which is also tied to the finance officer search that we talked about earlier.
And by the way, I have applied for the public funds investment training through San Marcos, and it will be remote on my computer. I'm just now waiting for them to send me the password so I can start the course. And it's 10 hours, and there's different subjects in the course that you can take to get 10 hours.
Yes,
So Pat, is the Texas Pool a state authorized or a state agency? Is it, so it's a safe place to put our money?
That's right.
so
Or
the
same as any place
the
we go.
benefits of being in the Lone Star Pool are that we get a greater rate of return than we would in a bank. It's safe and it's also liquid, so when we want to use the money for economic development, it's not tied up. Which is typically what happens if you put it someplace for a greater rate of return. But again, the purpose of our money is for economic development and not to make money on it. So that's why I think the recommendation of the Texas Lone Star Pool is a good one. I think it gives us what we need. It gives us the flexibility to be able to liquefy it, to spend it on economic development. It keeps it secure, and it does give us a greater rate of return than we're getting right now in the bank.
Yeah, I think the liquidity aspect is important.
That was my question.
Yes, I know that I've had discussion with several citizens, and the concern is that we don't need to be making money on our money, we need to be doing economic development with the money. And I think that's another reason to to approve this action. Is there more discussion? Okay, so I'll ask for a vote on approval of WEDC investment policy and transfer investment of up to $400,000 to the Lone Star Pool.
Just to clarify, I'm sorry,
No, please.
yeah, so we are, at this point, we're not approving the investment policy. We are, because we haven't, yeah, the motion would be amended to just transfer up to $400,000, or whatever amount you wanna do. So state the amount you wanna do, not up to,
Okay, so
leave the
Pat,
investment policy part out.
Pat, can you reword your motion
Okay, now what do
so
you
that
want me to say?
so that all we're doing is transferring money to the Texas Lone Star Pool and not approving the investment policy, because we need to do that at a later time.
I move that we transfer money to the, Lone Star, Texas pool.
We have to have a specific amount.
And how much do you wanna transfer?
$400,000.
Second the motion.
Discussion? No, okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, they passed unanimous. 7-0. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is consider and take possible action on attendance and participation at the ICSC Recon Conference and Trade Show. I want to start the discussion on this topic by saying that I think we are not prepared to attend a conference and trade show when we don't have a functioning website. I think that's the only comment I want to make at this time, but I'd like to open it up to the rest of the board to see what your thoughts are.
When is this conference?
Typically it's in May. I don't have the exact dates in front of me. That's the spring of this year.
Last year, my wife traveled to Las Vegas for training with her company, and she was on the airplane with the Converse EDC there and back. So I think it's in the latter part of the month, the last 4 or 5 days of the month,
Yes.
in May. And so she's going again this year, and I'll be going with her, so. If I mosey over to their EDC conference, I might do that.
Madam President, could we possibly table this motion till next month's meeting? And then by that time, the website should be working.
So we can do whatever you like. I just wanted to discuss it because I know it was a topic that had come up earlier. You can make a motion to table any decision on the topic, if you like, Mr. Fagan.
Okay, I make a motion then that we table this item till our February meeting.
Second.
Okay, so a motion has been made by John Fagan to table the discussion on the ICSC Conference and Trade Show until February, and it's been seconded by Mr. Cunningham. Discussion? Yes, Mario?
Yes. Let me just say that I agree with Jennifer on let's be better prepared to do external marketing, to do what is a very difficult and elaborate trade show that does have a lot of companies that we target represented, but we need to be better prepared. Now, having said all that, we're out of time. I mean, we're pretty soon it'll be difficult to get hotel rooms. They'd probably leave registration open, all that, but I'm not sure that we're going to be able to make this year. And actually, my thought is that we may be better off waiting until we are fully prepared to make this because we were with the mayor attending and others last year. I think we did a valiant effort, but I think we can do much better if we're going to use a world-class trade show like this and conference. If we're going to use it effectively, we need to be better prepared, and I don't see a delay until we are able to do it that way as a big setback. I think we need to consider that.
I think another concern for us, or another aspect for us to consider, is that we don't have a lot of commercial real estate that needs to be developed at this point. We are landlocked, we do have some commercial real estate to develop, but it's not a big piece of what we have, and that's what this trade show is for bringing external businesses to undeveloped commercial land. I'm not saying that we don't need to develop that real estate that we do have, and I'm not saying we don't wanna fill all that out. However, I think we need to be cognizant when we approach economic development, that we look at all of the different aspects, from helping the businesses that are already here, and then filling out those other commercial real estate properties that are undeveloped. It's very expensive to go to this conference, and we don't have a whole lot of commercial real estate to offer at that conference. And so I think that's another aspect that we need to consider before we decide how much money we spend on that endeavor.
Yeah, that is an investment. I mean, you have to look at it as an investment. We're gonna go and we're gonna invest, so what's the return on the investment? I'd rather take that money and put it in the community that we have, build, like we discussed earlier, having trainings, doing things. And then once we build our community of businesses, then we can reach out and we can do more that way. But I think the return on the investment probably isn't gonna be there. I mean, I don't know what we got last year from it, but I would be comfortable in going at all.
Know that the community as a whole did a good job last year, and I came back and reported. For example, I went down to the detail to the board of how many appointments, 56 with certain types of businesses, 7 hotels. All of this was what we did while we were there. Now, at the end of the day, you'd like to be able to measure job-producing investments that come in. The only ones I can think of that were tied to Recon in the past have been Quick Trip, which we met with the management team when we were there. And I understand that the In-N-Out Burger also was a lead that was generated there. Now, that's before my time, but if you're asking for specific results, those are the only 2 I can think of. It'll cost you, last year it was a little more reasonable. Fewer people went from the WEDC side, and it cost us about $15,000. The year before that, we spent closer to $20,000 on the event. So it is a big undertaking, harder to measure. But if you're working, if you feel external marketing can be effective, I do. The choice is this the place to do it? Is it worth spending that money? And are the results of the effort? That can be outlined pretty easily. Working hard at a trade show like this can be spelled out, and it can be set up that way. And that's the decision that this board has to make, is that enough? Because in the short term, you're not gonna be able to point to, I identified this company, he came. I mean, it just doesn't work. You know how economic development is, it doesn't work that way. And so, those are all considerations that I want to have.
It's just we're a new board, and I would think,
We didn't pay
We've all
for
been
the
around,
city
haven't
last year, did we? Okay, that's what I thought.
I just wanted to see if anybody on the board has done this in the past and is comfortable doing that and spending the money to do that, I would do that. I myself would not wanna go, cause I've never done it before, so it would be a waste of time, I believe. But, I mean, we've got some individuals that maybe they feel comfortable doing it and they would be able to do that, and I would support that. But we are a new board, and I don't know everybody's background, but if you feel like you can do that, then we can discuss that.
Well, one thing that I know that happened last year, and of course, I've never gone, but I've known the people that did go, that we paid a per diem for them. I am against that. I do not think anybody on this board for that few days needs a per diem, because there's so many functions, seminars and everything to go to, and there's banquets there that they have, and I don't feel that we should pay a per diem to anything.
Mr. Hernandez, I congratulate you for your frankness. Because in the past, all I've heard about from previous voices is how much benefit that they have gotten out of going to that convention year after year after year. And I wondered at the time whether there was really that much return on spending that kind of money for that trip.
Is Las Vegas the only trade show that they have?
No, they actually have some regional ones, and Madam President, if you wanna comment on that.
Yeah, so, ICSC has a regional conference in Fort Worth in February, I think it is. I'm attempting to, attend one of their events, on my own dime. There's a way that it can be done where it doesn't cost a whole lot of money, and I'm working on that. The reason I wanna do that is because I think this board has some questions about how beneficial these ICSC, events can be. And I think, dipping our toe into one of the regional events would be a good way to, get some of that information. So I'm looking at doing that.
I think there's also a regional one in Houston too, isn't there, Mario?
It moves around, Ms. Brown, I'm not sure where.
I believe the one this year is, the regional one this year is in Fort Worth.
Yes.
That's the one that I'm looking
I
at.
don't know that there's any
attending.
other regional ones planned for the year, but.
It's the only one I found
Yeah.
in doing my research. But anyway, that's what I think would be prudent.
I would be interested, I mean, on my dime, I'd do it just for the experience of going through that, so, I mean, it would.
I
Well,
can withdraw my motion to table if you'd like.
Okay. Would you like to make another motion, John?
Yes, I withdraw my motion to table the item.
Mario, I have a question for
Yes, sir.
you. How well attended is that?
Oh,
Oh.
it is 35,000 attendees. It is, heavy on the side of real estate, all the corporate real estate and the brokerage firms from throughout the world are there. You have 3-4 pavilions full of exhibit space. We focus on certain pavilions that have, for example, typically Pavilion C is the one that has most of the retail operations, most of the restaurants, most of the hotels exhibiting there. And we'll focus on that one and another one that has the location consultants that bring projects to you. So it is massive. It is, we have typically gone, last year we went for 3 days. You can't see the whole thing in 3 days. It's gotta be well planned. It's gotta be researched as to where the targets that you're aiming for are and their booths are located. See if you can, in some cases, it's hard, but you can get appointments with them at the booth. So it's, what I'm trying to say is, it's a lot of work. And it is, if somebody goes there they can spend the entire time, 3 days, and not visit anywhere near the number of companies and other entities that are important to us. It's a matter of coordinating, it's a matter of collateral material, it's a matter of being able to present and sell. You gotta be able to sell the picture and to these people. So, and then you don't know if you're gonna get any results. You know how that is, Howard. I mean, that's sales.
And I think another aspect is this board has not targeted a certain type of business for a certain piece of real estate that we have. And so I think in addition to the website needing to be more robust, I think we also need to do a little more homework on who are we targeting, because you're gonna have everybody in the room, but not everybody in the room is gonna be a good fit for what we're looking for. And are we sure exactly of what we're looking for? So maybe we just need to do some more homework in order to ensure that we get more out of it if we ever do decide to go.
And where is it located, Mario?
It's in Vegas at the convention center in Vegas. takes the whole thing.
Okay, so it's
A million.
a smaller venue.
Yeah. It's a smaller venue than what? It's 1 million square feet.
The Sands.
Oh, yeah, yes, sir,
million and
yes,
a
sir.
half.
Yeah, the sands are
I think one of the
smaller.
problems with, that the citizens complain about is it's Las Vegas. Well, I understand that's the largest convention center in the United States. I have been in one in Chicago, and if I would say, okay, we're gonna go to Chicago, nobody would say a word about it. They just think, oh, Las Vegas, you're gonna be out there partying all the time. Well, you don't have time to party. I've got the handout from them here, and you look at all those things that you're gonna attend. You don't have enough time to party there.
I understand that, but I would tell you that I would have the same concerns regardless of the location. I don't know about anybody else, but I would have the same concerns regardless of the location.
I think it's something we need to do, but I don't think we're prepared to do it. And website, we don't have any handout, and, other than, hi, I'm from Windcrest, Texas, we'd like you to come build a store.
Yeah, and know that, again, in fairness, we developed a profile on Windcrest internally. And we developed an inventory of real estate internally. Last year, we hand carried these things and electronically carried these things and shipped them to everybody we met with. So we prepared as best we could, but it's not the kind of preparation, you need a lot more preparation to sell the community.
I think one of the big things you need in this package, if you don't have it, is some success stories and some testimonials. And, I can tell you this, over the last 30 years, I've spent over 1.5 years in Las Vegas. And, I understand these trade shows, and I'm gonna tell you, 35,000 is a little show. And, you know, I'm of the opinion, right now, if we table this to next month and see where we're at, we will not have a problem getting hotel rooms. And, you might not be at Caesar's Palace,
Don't wanna be.
but, you know, you could be right across the street at the Hilton, I guarantee you. And, the thing we should look at is if we decide to go, decide who we're gonna go and start shopping, for tickets and things like that. Cause when I used to go to the trade show that I went to every November for about 20 years, I had my airplane ticket in June or May. And, you know, cause there are some deals out there to Las Vegas, especially from San Diego. You know, my airfare, last time I went, direct flight, $254 round trip. And there are some deals with hotels in conjunction with the convention. And they range from the Venetian and Caesar's Palace to the Holiday Inn Express.
Well, that's the same thing that they have for Recon also.
Yeah.
You can stay in the most expensive place, or you can stay at a cheaper hotel.
And,
And of course, the longer that you wait to apply for it, the cheaper ones are gonna go first, because everybody wants to save the money.
well, the other thing too is.
And I'm not saying that we should rush it this year, I'm just saying any year, that like we missed a discount in December because we didn't apply for it. And so everybody is going to want to get the cheapest hotel and the nicest, cheapest hotel. And that the longer you wait, then all of a sudden you're gonna have to pay more money.
Well, and then, and the thing about Las Vegas, sometimes you gotta consider, the cheapest hotel might not be the most economical hotel, because you're 10 miles from the convention center and you gotta take a cab back and forth.
Hey, how can you make sure you speak into the microphone, please?
And, okay,
Thank you.
and you might have to take a cab back and get home, and you go, Hotel X was $250 a night, and I stayed here at Hotel Y for $125, but I had, in making my visits, I had $250 a day just in taxi cabs, and if I had stayed at the other one, I just walked downstairs.
I'd like to focus the discussion more on the actual content of the conference. The travel's gonna be what it's gonna be, it's gonna be expensive or, you know, depending on, but I think the germane aspect of the conversation, the discussion needs to be whether or not we should go to the conference. So is there more discussion on that aspect?
I think we should look at all of last year's documentation, everything we looked at, everything we went after, and see if that's something that we still wanna do, and then, I mean, we'd have to table it, cause it's not gonna get a.
Well, the other thing too is, some of these things are a long-term process. You might talk to somebody in May, and it might not come to fruition for 2 or 3 years.
And that's what commercial real estate is
And you have to
also.
include that when you're looking at your return on investment. Yeah, I talked to this guy in May of 2016, got our foot in the door, blah, blah. They did not commit to 2019. So, did we keep a list of prospects or?
Yes, sir. I've got all that. I've got it in report form. I've also got a list of all the contacts that we made and, you know, where the ones who visited their booths. I mean, it was a well thought out approach last year for, I believe, the first time that it was well thought out, but still, we weren't as prepared as I would have liked to be.
Yeah, and knowing, yeah, you know, you can't sell from an empty wagon. You've got to give them a reason to buy. And looking at the tools that I have seen, we don't have the tools. You know, everybody else is coming in with a dog and pony show, and I'm there with my pretty face. You know, we need more. We need, you know, you have to have your selling tools to sell.
I think we're all in agreement that 7 rookies here are just not ready to go this season. That, you know, and then all of our terms are up for renewal in September anyway, aren't they? So let's
Actually, no,
2020.
2020. Oh, okay.
3,
Summer 19 and summer 20.
summer 19, summer 20,
Okay,
3 or
so-
4.
So I think that we should start planning for the convention in 2020 and be ready to go and have a real whiz-bang type of presentation for them and be really prepared to go then. And so I don't even think we have to table it or do anything, because this was just possible
No.
discussion. We talked about it and we can move on,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, okay. Unless someone has anything else to say, we'll move on. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is consider and take possible action on resolution and approval of authorized signer for bank and financial accounts. If I'm not mistaken, this is just to close the loop on actually signing paperwork for the accounts for the new board members.
Yeah, if we could just get that started. This is the resolution. We've added the names of the people on all accounts that need to come off. Last meeting, you approved Pat, Jennifer, and myself to go on these accounts, and that does that in the resolution. This is simply, since we have you all here, I believe there's 7 slots to be signed. There should be.
There are 9.
There are 9, good, well, at least we have more than, if we can have everybody sign the resolution.
So we just need to move this around and have
Just,
everybody
you can
sign
move
it.
on, Madam President, on the agenda, just have that circulating while you're doing
Then it
that.
goes to you when we're done, Joe, is that right?
Goes back to Mario.
Back tomorrow, okay. All right, I will start signing and I will move it to my left, then you can send it back, okay. Next item on the agenda is consider and take possible action on shared services agreement with the city. So I want to open the discussion on this topic with letting everyone know the current status of the shared service agreement with the city. So we had some discussion tonight about, in some ways, the Economic Development Corporation is a separate independent entity, and in some ways we fall under the city. The shared services agreement is the document that outlines exactly what that means. The city does provide services to us, and we need to compensate the city for those services. And the shared services agreement, again, it outlines exactly what the city will do and what dollar amount we will compensate the city for those services that they provide. Now, a draft of that agreement was sent by the former board to the city, and the city has not signed it. And I have asked that the city not sign it so that this new board can take a look at that agreement and make recommendations, edits, possible changes to it. Part of the shared service agreement with the city is the fact that currently we are compensating the city for the service of having Mr. Hakala be our financial officer. So again, another reason for us to take another look at it before anybody signs it. So I believe all of you received a copy of the draft, correct? Yes. What I would like to do is I would like everyone on the board to take a very, very close look at that agreement and provide your recommendations so that we can produce a new draft that we'll send to the city and ask the city to promptly approve it or let us know what they have concerns with on it. So that's what I would like to see happen, and any discussion on that.
How much time are you giving us on this?
Until the next meeting.
Till the next, okay.
What I would like is, by the next meeting, we have a draft for the board as a whole to approve.
Okay, we're gonna say each of us has a change or a suggestion. How do we get together to present the draft and make it into a presentable form?
Well, the first thing that will have to happen is any recommended edits will have to be looked at by Mario and also by Joe to make sure that they are plausible.
So we can email you our recommended changes. Okay, this way we don't have to
Yes.
have a special meeting to put
Correct.
it into presentable form. Okay.
So you all can email them in electronic form, you can handwrite, if you want it in a Word document where you can redline. If you get them to Mario, we can kind of compile what all the changes are, questions. We can then have an executive session to discuss what we can and can't do. A lot of the stuff is formulaic, so really I would have you focus on the services and the structural, the substance of it, versus the legalese that's at the front and end. Really, what are we paying the city, what are we expecting from the city?
Right, we need to focus on the meat and potatoes of exactly what the relationship looks like between us and the city. The shared services agreement is probably, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, probably the foundational document that outlines that relationship.
Yeah, so it provides for whatever services we receive for them, and frankly, we're gonna have to have some support from the city because we don't have our own accounting system. And even if we have our own finance officer, we may still be on their accounting system, or maybe not, because we are rolled up in their audit, generally speaking. So there's a lot to consider there, but it's also how we are able to have our employees receive benefits from the city is through the shared service arrangement.
And then the other aspect that we need to be aware of is that once we produce our draft of what we think it should look like, it'll go to the city, and the city may not agree on certain points, so we may have some negotiating to do from there. But what I wanna make sure that we do is that we start from what we think it ought to look like, and then we can work with the city from there to come to an agreement that both parties agree to.
Does the city have a menu of pricing for these services?
They do
Or
not.
do we just kind of like, okay, leave it open there and hope they don't take all our money?
It's not a trust me, is it?
It's a salary.
No, what we did is, I attempted, and the former city attorney had more or less signed off on this agreement, saying, yeah, this looks pretty good to me. we tried to encapsulate what the city is currently providing for us in this agreement, although informally. Now, I believe probably in the bowels, because the city has references to shared service arrangement with us going back, to who knows when. There had to have been an agreement at some point in time. We just can't find it due to record-keeping issues with the city and the fact that none of us were around before 2013 or 14. So we tried to capture what is currently being done. So that's what this agreement really spells out. And it is $30,000 a year is the fee we pay to the city. In exchange, they provide really HR support and finance office support, city secretary support for these meetings, all the technical support we have for the meeting. That's all kind of captured in this agreement. So look at it as this is memorializing what we're currently getting, and then that may not be what we want moving forward.
Questions go to you or Mario?
I would just to preserve attorney's fees, I would ask all questions go to Mario, and then Mario will compile them, because there may be overlapping, and I don't want to be answering your questions one off, where Pat may have the same question as you, and vice versa. So Mario can consolidate, and then we'll get a solid answer out to everybody at the next meeting. Or we'll have a work session at the next meeting, and we'll go through it.
I think it'll, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, I think we'll have to discuss it in executive session.
Yeah, any specific advice I'm gonna give you would be an executive session.
Okay. So what I'd like us to do is, everyone take a look at the shared services agreement, send your questions, concerns, edits, recommended changes to Mario. He'll compile them, he'll run the items past the attorney that need to be, and then we will be prepared in executive session at our next meeting to finalize our draft of the proposal that we can then send to the city for their consideration. Is there any more discussion on this topic? Okay. The next item on the agenda is consider and take possible action on WEDC's ability to participate in city street improvement program. So, the citizens of Windcrest are very concerned about the condition of the city streets. There is a lot of concern that not a lot of repair and maintenance work has been done on the streets for a while, as funds have been diverted to other projects. It's a fact that this EDC can do some street repairs and maintenance if it's linked to economic development projects. So in order to be responsive to the citizens, what I would like to do is I would like to form a committee of 2 board members who would take the work that's already been done by the city. The city already had a streets committee, and they've produced a report of the streets that need to be repaired, and then balance that against the streets that we can contribute to, and come back to the board as a whole with recommendations for street improvements that we can do. I would like to ask Mr. Stimson if he would be willing to serve on that committee.
I will.
And if there's one other person that would be willing to volunteer to serve on that committee with him. If not, I'll do it. Okay, so I make a motion that we create a city street improvement program committee comprised of myself and Mr. Stimson to look at the streets that need to be improved, and also what streets the EDC can contribute to repairing, and make a recommendation to the board in the future.
Second motion.
Okay, so I, Jennifer Newman, made the motion, and George Alva seconded it. Is there discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is consider and take possible action on process to review staff and consulting agreement. So I think we would all agree that it's important for everyone to be evaluated when they do their job. It's important for you to know whether you're doing a good job, whether you need to improve some things. I think we all need input, is my point. And what I would like to do is I would like to establish a process where we, the board, evaluate our employees, and I would also like us to consider evaluating each other in our performance as board members, as peers. And so I'd like to open that up for discussion.
We need a motion for discussion, so, make a motion. George Howell makes a motion to consider developing a process to review staff and consulting agreements.
Second.
Kevin Compton, second.
Okay, discussion.
And this would be just for the accountability for the community to know we're doing our jobs well, I mean.
Well, so there currently is an evaluation form that Mario has created for him to be evaluated. But yes, I think for accountability, I know we have a new employee, and I'm sorry.
It's in your book under the
Yeah,
appropriate.
it is. Tab number 9, yeah, it's tab number 9. And so, you know, we have a new employee in Karen Nelson. Mario's been here a while. But I think we all need feedback and input on our job performance. And so an evaluation form is a piece of that, but what I would really like is a process to say, where we would say, at these intervals, these people evaluate these positions. And I do think that it would be beneficial for the board members to evaluate each other as peers. But again, I want to open that up for discussion and see what the rest of the board thinks of that.
Well, one question that I have is if we're evaluating each other, is it for the purpose of improving, for counseling, or for saying, George has done a really horrible job, let's get rid of him?
Well, the purpose of the evaluation is to provide the evaluated person with an assessment. I know that I always want to know what the people I'm working with think of my job performance, and I want to know if there are things that I'm not doing well. You know, I want to know that so that I can improve.
So we can elevate each other, help each other.
Yes,
Yes, okay.
yes,
Would
to
it be
help
more-
improve our job performance.
Would it be more of an evaluation or more of like a grassroots type of, this is what I see?
I'm thinking
going
a peer,
on?
I'm thinking a peer
Yeah.
evaluation, right? Not a boss to subordinate evaluation, but more of a peer evaluation.
But do we run the, I'm not trying to be negative here, but do we run the risk of, you know, right now, this is our second meeting, everybody likes each other, everybody gets along, and I evaluate Kevin and throw a comment in his direction that's not meant to be hurtful or critical in any way, but he may take it incorrectly, and then that sets a rift between us.
I don't know, if it's, I guess the term evaluation and when I'm evaluated for my job, I'm gonna get a promotion, I'm gonna get a raise, I'm gonna get, so it's more the term evaluation, I guess I'm looking at.
So,
More
again-
like a grassroots team building, hey, this is where we're at, this is what the community sees.
So this is-
Maybe we're not doing what we should be. I
Well,
don't
this
know.
is why I want us to
Yeah.
develop a process, right? And so, I would see that likely the way we would evaluate Mario or Karen as paid employees would be a different process than how we would give each other feedback as peers on the board. But that's why I want to investigate building a process, because we currently don't have one to do any of this. And so, I think it's something that should be done. Now, exactly what it should look like, that's what I'm not proposing what it should look like. I'm proposing that we look at it and develop a process to do it.
That's for our own good.
Correct.
I agree that we need a process for staff, but I'm opposed to carrying that over to board members. We are evaluated by the city council that put us here and by the people of Windcrest. They are the ones that will determine whether we should stay here or not.
That's a good point.
I agree.
Okay.
Call for vote? Yes, we have a motion and a second. That was the discussion.
So you do have a motion, but just a little guidance if I may. Oftentimes, the board would have a personnel item, and this is fine for discussion and kicking it off, but if you wanna move forward with a formal evaluation instrument and a process, normally you would have a executive session where you would, under personnel item, you would work out the details with Mario as part of that team for his input, and cause you want the staff to be invested in the instrument and agreeing that, yes, this is the instrument I will be evaluated by, and then you will set goals and objectives in open session. Some of that will be in closed session to evaluate, to create that, and then some of it will be an open session that has to be for transparency to then adopt the goals and objectives, and ultimately the evaluation instrument will be a public record. The evaluation itself may or may not be public, because it's confidential personnel. But that would be the process, so the next step would be, unless you get a motion to approve moving forward on this, and then at the next meeting, or in the interim, you may have Jennifer, yourself, and maybe, it doesn't have to be a committee necessarily, but we could work together, you could work with Mario on bringing those tools to the board so we can have a brief work session again under personnel to formalize that where it's confidential, and then have action in open session to approve what we would call the evaluation instrument and the process itself.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement that we would like to move forward on evaluating the employees, but not the board members. So that's what we'll do.
I think maybe, Stimson, I think that maybe we put that,
First up, what?
that work.
So is it glowing red?
If somebody's compensated for their work, they need to be evaluated. If they're not compensated for their work, then maybe we can, in the back room, talk about it.
Yep. I think that makes sense.
We need to be accountable for what we're doing. We do need to be accountable for what we're doing. We're volunteering or we're doing a job. I mean, we are doing a job.
Correct.
But just like the term evaluation, I mean, we need to discuss if someone's not doing a certain part right. It's just more of a communication thing than an evaluation. I think it's just the term evaluation that's gonna be a change.
Okay. All right. We can move on, right, Joe?
Don't we have to vote?
You can vote, or you can bring it back at the next agenda when you're ready with
Yeah,
something to approve.
Joe had indicated we didn't need to vote, we
Oh,
could
okay.
just.
Right.
Yeah, you don't
work on it.
actually have a process to approve yet.
Yeah, so we don't have anything to approve right now. I really just wanted to get the conversation started so that we could, see what the board wanted to do. And then the last item on the agenda is consider and take possible action on storefront grant application from Tokyo Express, Mr. Howell.
There we go. Let me just make some comments, and first let me say, how thrilled I am to have, Mr. Howell making this commitment and taking, and Jennifer and I were talking about this earlier, that we thought maybe the Whataburger building would sit there in brown paint forever until somebody saw the value of the pad side and tore it down. And so we owe a bit of gratitude to him for taking that very awkward building and making it into a going concern. Having said all that, he did apply for a storefront grant, and and all the information came in December. In fairness, he has had difficulty primarily with utilities beyond our control, beyond Windcrest's control. Specifically, natural gas line that had to be for, Joe knows probably better than I do, for whatever reason, TxDOT was involved in that, and then of course CPS Energy. So that has held up a lot of things. In the meantime, he had made an investment that he needed to go forward with, so went ahead with the primary renovation and facade renovation, but came to us for help on the signage. What has happened is that he's requested $5,000, which is half of the signage cost, $10,200 or so. I think the primary estimate is in your package. Unfortunately, he's had to pull the trigger on having the sign made and delivered very quickly. And so the only things that are in question right now is the sign has been delivered and is up. And our guidelines say that you can start a process of building out once you file the application. But our guidelines also say that the primary purposes can't be completed before the board approval. So it puts us in a very awkward position because this is a great opportunity that he's presented to Windcrest to take that building and do something constructive with it. But when you get down to it, and I think Joe, if you want to chime in, that at the end of the day, an incentive program like Storefront Grant has to be an incentive. And if the project is done, which is not done, but the specific use of the project, signage has been performed, then I don't agree, but it can't be called a reward because it's already done. And unfortunately, the timing of this whole thing has worked out as such, and he understands, that he communicated with me and said, I've got to pull the trigger on this signage package now, and I've got to have it installed by, he told me it would probably happen by the 5th, and I told him, if you do that, I don't know whether we can help on the grant. And as hard as we've tried to accommodate his schedule, that's the complete story. So I put that before you, that it would take, to approve the grant, would probably take some kind of exemption to your current guidelines for Storefront. Joe, am I saying that correctly?
I haven't stopped you yet.
Okay. Well, and you can tell how strongly I support this, but we've got to be realistic about what our guidelines to the program say as well.
I see the picture of the sign.
Right.
And it looks complete, but is it really? Is there anything else he could do to it? Just a strip of paint?
So, I'm gonna have Joe hop in at that point.
So my understanding is it's complete. And we were looking at, is there something else he can do? Is there more signage he can add? But technically, your policies state that no matter how you read it, before the project that we are funding is complete, the board has to approve the grant. Because it is an incentive grant to support and incentivize those type of improvements. Those things are not done retroactively, after the fact, because these are public funds, and we are limited that we can't make a gift of public funds. So the whole premise of the economic incentive is that we are incentivizing, we're not making a gift. So when it's been done after the fact, that is why your policy and your procedures for this are written, that they have to have board approval first before it's complete. They can already be underway, but the application has to be in, and the board has to vote up or down on the grant before they actually complete the work that we're funding a part of. And that is technically not done here. You would be having to make an exemption from that, which could set precedent. And then where do you draw the line on that? So that's the concern.
Well, the other concern is that making an exemption to our policy runs afoul of state law, correct? And then we would have an exemption to a policy that is not in line with state law.
Policy is separate from state law, policy implements state law. The state law that would be concerning is the retroactivity, which is constitutional, and the Texas constitutional restriction on gift of public funds. So the whole reason we're allowed to gift through the grant these funds is for the economic incentive, which is done on the front end. This is being done after the fact now, through no fault of the EDCs, and maybe just bad timing on his part with his necessity, but at this point, you'd have to have an exception to your policy, and there would be some questions about the retroactivity, because it's already completed, and some questions about whether it truly is an incentive at this point since it's done versus a gift of public funds.
If the sign is complete, and that's what the original request was for, and he's paid for that, is there anything else in the restaurant that needs an improvement facially that we could authorize there?
We haven't
I
posed.
mean, he'd have to reapply.
We haven't posed that question yet, George. We want.
Other question, is the sign electrified?
No.
I don't know the answer to that.
If it's
'cause
not
it
electrified,
just went up.
it's not complete. No, if, the request is for a
Well, my
sign.
concern is the
in-
fact
in-
that we did not have an architectural drawing of the sign.
Well, an architectural drawing is not required by our policy.
That's what we've always done when someone wanted a sign. We have seen an architectural drawing of what that sign
But our
is.
policy doesn't require it. So it can't be a reason
Well,
that we
maybe we
would.
should.
Mario, can you
Maybe we
And
should
one
check
thing
and
else
see
I
if
wanna
that
bring
sign
up
is
is the
electrified?
fact.
Yes, sir, I can check that and.
Because if
But
it's
I-
not electrified, it is not complete yet.
I want the project to be funded because he's doing this in good faith. It's not like he, said, I'm gonna,
Yeah,
I'm gonna apply for these funds now that I've already done it.
I understand how it is with sign guys.
It's very awkward,
Yeah, it's,
But I don't know, if that's splitting hairs, Madam President, Joe, if you
Well,
look at
one
it that
thing,
way.
excuse me, one thing else that has been brought up by several people, I know some of the people on the board are interested in, is having Walsall Road looking better. I object to pylon signs on Walsall Road. 35, fine, cause that's different, cars are going back at traffic and they wanna see what's there. But that cheapens the area to have a pylon sign. The pylon sign is already up. I have gone to the Board of Adjustment and asked them if they authorized that. No, they didn't. Talked to someone at Planning and Zoning Commission, they didn't know anything about it. And if we start letting pylon signs go up all the way down Walsall Road, as some of the people here on the board want to have Walsall looking better, it's not gonna look better, it's gonna look worse.
I will, if the board would like, get with Mr. Ho and see if there's anything left. For example, Hob, you mentioned running the needed power to the sign and see if there's any. And I'll also broach the question about, are there other improvements that would qualify that you could apply for? I mean, at the end of the day, we certainly want to send a message that we wanted to do this and we were in full support, but it's just a matter of the timing and the difficulties, the specific difficulties he had and his need to commit to certain things. That's the reason we didn't end up helping him on the facade. And that's, I hope you'll agree that he's done wonders with that whole Whataburger building, and putting up that new facade. I mean, anything would be an improvement, but I think he's put a lot of money into it. So I can't see Hob, I can't see any other way to do it except ask the questions and see if there's anything else we can do. And I'm not sure that you want to not take action today. That's totally up to you.
The thing with it, the reason I asked if it was electrified, because in any permit, the job has to be completed before it's approved. And if it is not electrified, it ain't finished, so it wouldn't be an incentive, cause he isn't finished with it yet. Am I right, Joe?
Yeah, so one thing I was thinking for a solution here, since there's unanswered questions, but certainly by the next board meeting, it's gonna be probably electrified if it's not already, is what if you were to entertain a motion to conditionally approve the grant, subject to verification that it has not been completed in line with your existing policies? And if Mario can determine and then confirm with Jennifer that, okay, it has not been completed, and we're not splitting hairs, it legitimately has not been completed for reasons like you suggest, then the board will have then, at this meeting, taken action to approve it. But if it turns out all the permits are pulled and there, and it's occupied and the lights are on, like we drive by this evening and the lights are on,
Yeah.
then sorry, come again next time or next project, let us know. So that would be a conditional approval, if you want, contingent on Mario verifying with Jennifer that the project has not been completed. And if it has been completed, then sorry.
My only concern is that we comply with the spirit and the intent of the policy and all of those things. I don't want us as a board to skirt the rules. I'm not okay with that. If we can legitimately do it, I think it's a good thing to do. But I don't want us to be anywhere near a problem.
I think you could probably resolve that by driving by this evening. Let's see if the lights are on.
And again, we don't even know if it's a sign that's designed to be lit.
No, we don't.
Right, so you could drive by tonight and it's not lit and it's
From
not designed to be, I don't know.
from the cost, I would pretty much guess it is an illuminated sign.
Okay. Again, I just wanna make sure that this board is doing everything the right way. Unfortunately, I think we cannot do things retroactively. I don't think that that's within our purview, and I don't think that's what we should be doing. I mean, I definitely wanna help our business owners, and I am absolutely very grateful to Mr. Howe for making the investment in that building. Because as we talked earlier, I mean, who else would have? And I hope that his business is immensely successful. I don't want us to endanger our integrity to help him do that. I don't think that that's I don't think that's the way we ought to operate.
Well, you can check on it, can't you?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
And also if there's some other project that we could help them with.
Yes, I can deliver that message.
Table?
You really can't table it, because if it's not completed now, by the time you meet again, so you would have to have a special meeting, which could be done if you want to. If Mario determines it's really not completed, then he would need to bring it back quickly for another meeting if you don't take action tonight.
I just think there's too much, we've discussed too much about it, ins and outs, to be, the integrity's too much in question. I don't think, I guess we can vote on it, but
Well, you could call for a motion, there wouldn't be a motion, and then it would just, nothing would happen. If there's
Yeah.
not a motion to proceed, then
Is there a motion to proceed? Hearing none, we'll move on. Do I need to read the executive session if we're not planning on having one?
no, you do not.
Okay. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right, Maria, I hear you over there. I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:12.
I make a motion that we adjourn. I second the motion.
John Fagan made a motion to adjourn and George Alva seconded the motion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you.